with the business of the meeting, I would like to remind all present that this meeting will be recorded and uploaded to the Council's website as soon as possible after the meeting and also for archive purposes. Can I also ask all participants to please turn your mics and cameras on when you're invited by the chair to speak? Don't have to have them on all the way through the meeting, but you can if you like, but as long as they are on when the chair asks you to speak. Should you wish to speak, would you please indicate by raising the hand function on Teams? If, however, this function ceases to work during the meeting, please indicate in the chat facility that you wish to speak. With regard to voting, if you have any voting tonight on any recommendations, if there is no dissent, the chair will accept the silence as agreement. However, also if during the meeting you have any technical difficulties, please let the Democratic Services Officer know as soon as possible. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, let's start with, are there any apologies for absence, please?
I have no apologies, Chair.
No, okay, thank you. So the appointment of the Honorary Vice Chair from the representatives of the voluntary sector for this year. Any nominations, please?
Indeed, Chair. We're nominating Linda Newton, and she said that she was going to be here, but I guess she's having a few issues getting in. I've just emailed her to find out what's happening. But she is the nomination from the third sector.
Okay, thank you. Susan, was that a hand? No? Okay. Is there anybody to second that, or does it not need a seconder, please?
Karen, Cherry would need a seconder, but I'm happy for you to second because I understand from Rachel that Linda is more than happy. And she's just come in. She's just joining. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, I'm happy to second that. So if we get Linda.
Hello, sorry.
Oh, hi, that's fine. You've just been made the Honorary Vice Chair from the voluntary sector.
You.
Okay, thank you. So minutes of the meeting held on the 25th of July, please. I'm trying to see who was actually there. I'd like to move the minutes, Chair. Yes, I was going to say I'm happy to move those if we got a seconder. Thank you. Jane.
I'll second.
Thank you very much. Okay, so moving on then, please. Any declarations of interest? Susan.
Yeah, just to declare a personal, not a prejudicial interest in agenda item 5. I'm a trustee of Coastlands Church, which runs the Vale Food Bank, and that's one of the partners in Food Vale.
Okay, thank you. Right. There's no others, then we're going to go on to the Vale of Glamorgan Public Services Board annual report, and I'm not sure who's going to be leading on that for us, please.
Helen Moses, I believe, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Helen.
Thanks, Chair. This report is a reference from the Scrutiny Committee, and it's the Public Service Board's annual report, and it's the last annual report of the previous 5-year wellbeing plan, and we this year have published a new wellbeing plan. So the annual report sets out some of the work that was undertaken in the last financial year, but also looks a bit forward and sort of reflects on the fact that we now have a new wellbeing plan as well. Within the committee report that was forwarded on with the reference, there is a link to the online annual report, which is published on the PSB's PSB's website. And this is the format that we've used for a number of years now to try and make the report a bit more engaging. And it details the progress against the wellbeing objectives within that wellbeing plan, and also the priorities that we had in the wellbeing plan, which ran from 2018 to 23. Most members of the committee are probably aware that the Public Services Board was established through the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, and it brings together statutory partners like the Health Board, the Council, Natural Resources Wales and the Fire Service, and also partners from the Fire Service, the third sector. We have a Town and Community Council representative on there, Probation Service, College and Welsh Government. I think I've covered most of them that are on that Public Service Board, and Rachel also sits on the Public Service Board. So within the annual report itself, we've set out some of the progress against what were the wellbeing objectives within that wellbeing plan. So those were objectives around engagement, giving children a good start in life, tackling deprivation and our environment. And we particularly focus in within the annual report on 4 priority areas which the PSB had established. They were on the Move More, Eat Well plan, which focuses on things like being more active and having a healthier diet, and also brings in the work of Food Veil, which Councillor Lloyd Selby referenced earlier. One of the other priorities around climate change, then we have a sort of a project piece of work, which is Value in the Vale, which is taken forward by the Council's housing team on behalf of the Public Service Board, and then also a broader priority work stream around improving how all partners work together and undertake engagement and reach different stakeholders in the community. So the annual report attempts to sort of try and illustrate the work that's been undertaken to deliver those objectives and those priority work streams, and focusing in on sort of what's been achieved against those and what's planned for the future. So although that focuses on our previous wellbeing plan, much of that work will carry on now, Stu, as the PSB moves forward with the delivery of the new wellbeing plan that we published earlier in this year. And the priorities in the new wellbeing plan are around climate change, tackling deprivation and being age friendly. But also within that, we recognise the range of partnership working that takes place in the Vale, and that there's a great deal of work that happens. So we'll continue to include within our annual report, because it actually works quite nicely, I think, in terms of bringing those different work streams together and showing actually the connections between much of what we do. So, for example, the work through Food Veil and how that might link to our work on climate change, how our work on cost of living will also link into some of the work that we're undertaking to become more age friendly. So within the covering committee report, it highlights a bit some of the key elements. So again, makes reference to the work that's being led by public health colleagues, by Safer Vale in terms of some of that focus on CCTV, some of the work that our youth service undertook in terms of the giving sort of the work that they did with some of the young people within the area, thinking about some of the issues that were particularly pertinent to young women and their feelings around safety as well. So we've kind of brought some of those aspects within that annual report as well. And again, it doesn't cover everything that happens in partnership, but hopefully illustrates and reassures people that there is a lot that happens within partnership and the efforts that are made to engage with different partners and the community within that. So within the annual report itself, just focusing on a couple of those priority work streams. As part of the work undertaken as Move More, Eat Well, we focus on the work that's being undertaken within our schools. There's quite a lot of work that's happening within the Pencoitra cluster. We're also undertaking some work to think about healthier advertising as well, and thinking about how the advertising space can be used more to encourage people to think about the food that they eat, and sort of so less around some of the high sugar and high fat content, and thinking about how we can sort of more promote healthier alternatives. There's also work that's happening with partners within their workplace as well. So again, recognising those links with staff well-being. Food Veil is a kind of quite an integral partnership within a partnership, I suppose, in terms of that work with Move More, Eat Well, and the work that's being undertaken there, both around sort of food insecurity, but also around sort of the choices of healthier eating as well. And as we sort of look at some of the work that we're doing as part of the new wellbeing plan, work is starting to take place now to think about formulating a food strategy for the Vale as well. So again, starting to build on that, thinking of the different aspects of food linked to the environment, but also, I say, healthy eating and sort of cost of living. There's also work that's happening with the council's leisure team as well about being more active. So work that's happening around the Golden Pass, so to encourage some of our older residents to be more active as well. So there's schemes that have been run there. And there was also some grant funding that was given through Move More, Eat Well, that was given through the third sector to support some work as well. And that's detailed in the report. In terms of the climate change aspects, partners across the Public Service Board are doing a considerable amount in terms of thinking of the work that they can do in terms of their transport, their organisation and their buildings to reduce impact on the environment. So the report details some of the work that's happening by individual organisations around reducing their waste, reducing electricity use, and a greater focus in terms of thinking of the land that they might use and impact on the environment as well. And what we're looking to move now more towards is where there are opportunities for more collective action. So rather than just sort of what the organisations might be doing individually, but again, thinking about some of that shared learning and networking. And as partners, we've got a workshop next month thinking about how we start to move forward. So we're building on some of the detail that's within that annual report. But what we can do, we've also held events, most recently working with our youth service with young people, that was co-produced to think about what interests young people in terms of the environment, and that was really successful, and we hope to build on that in the future in terms of the discussions. And I think there was quite a lot of challenges that were put to us from our young people as well, so it was that was great. But similarly, we've also had a focused event on climate change that was co-hosted with our 50+ forum that we held in Lantwit Major, and again, different experts from within the PSB attended that and had discussions with some of our older residents about their concerns around climate change as well. So again, we're keen to make sure that we're providing those opportunities for people to engage. The project, as I say, that we talk a little bit more about within the report is the Value in the Vale work that housing colleagues have been leading on. They've had funding through the Health Board, through the Early Years and Prevention funding, to help take forward that work, which is funded until March of next year. And that was to build on the successful time banking project that had been established for housing tenants and to see how that could be expanded. So they've been working on that, and they've got a more digital offer with that. They have brought in more organisations to provide that offer, but again, they're now started to look at how they can make that more sustainable as well. And that might be something that the committee would be interested in having a more specific report on at a future meeting. And then, as I say, engagement has been one of the broad aspects that the PSB has continued to focus on. So as I say, there's those different events, for example, that we've done on climate change and as part of age-friendly work. But also we did a considerable amount of engagement to help shape our wellbeing assessment and the wellbeing plan, which is informing the next stage of work for the PSB. And we did some work with consultants Grasshopper to help the work that we started to do now in some of our more deprived communities around some of the asset mapping and thinking about what the engagement plan should be. And we've been successful in having funding to take some of that work forward now as well through shared prosperity funding. So again, there'll be a bit more momentum building on some of the work from the last plan as we now move into the next plan. So that's a bit of, I suppose, a bit of a whistle-stop tour through the annual report, and hopefully gives a flavour of the different work that's being undertaken through the PSB that we've referenced within the annual report. We also have kind of set out some of what the key focuses will be for the year ahead that the PSB will be taking forward. Again, there, say, building on the work that we've done to date and what our new priority work streams are. So hopefully, as I say, that's given you an indication of the annual report, and if there's any questions.
Okay, thank you. Anybody want to ask a question? No? Right, okay, Susan.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Helen, for taking us through that. I read the report with interest. Really good to see the scale and the depth of projects that have been developed through the PSB over the last 2 years. In my capacity as Mayor last year, I had the privilege of going to support the opening of the Repair Cafe in Barry, and it's just great to see that a queue of people on the first Saturday of every month when that team of volunteers come together to do what they can to repair items. I've taken something myself. You get a nice free cuppa and an opportunity to chat with people, but doing really important work, you know, things that would otherwise find their way to landfill. So great to see things like that happening. My question was around the priorities for the new wellbeing plan. So in the report, I'm sorry, I'm struggling to find, it's section 5 and it's point 8 if you've got the report in front of you. It talks about research will be undertaken into existing food poverty projects, risks, resilience and gaps, and to develop a pilot project in the rural Vale. So my question is, what's the scope of that research into food poverty? Will that just be focused on the rural Vale? Because clearly in terms of our most deprived communities, we're seeing wards such as Gibbonsdown, Castleland and my own ward, Buttrells, with a significant increase in the number of people who are having to rely on some form of charitable food aid. So what will the scope of that specific research be? Is it just the rural Vale, or will it be Vale-wide?
Like there's two elements really to that work. So we've had funding now to support the work of the Food Vale Partnership through Welsh Government, and with that somebody has been appointed to really undertake these two pieces of work. So one is about working with existing food projects and looking at what some of the resilience is, how we can maybe build some stronger networks between those organisations and understand a little bit more what some of the challenges are, and that will cover the whole of the Vale. So that's kind of one part of the work. The other part of work that person will be looking to take forward in conjunction with other colleagues from the council, public health and the people working in the third sector is the potential for developing a bit more of a rural project. We tried to do something last winter and we struggled around some of the logistics with that. So we're hoping that we can explore that in a little more detail to see what might be possible. So some of that will be researching how some of that has been taken forward. So I think there's been some more successful projects in North Wales around that. So there's really two elements to that. What can we do to maybe reach some of our more rural communities, and whether that's sort of taking some of the projects out to them or helping them to reach some of the projects that do exist, but at the same time recognising that there's a number of projects that already exist, but how some of them are sort of struggling around, I think, in terms of how they can, their sustainability, whilst there is also a growing demand, unfortunately, as well. So that's what we're looking to do through those two projects.
Okay, thank you. Did you want to come back?
If I may, just very briefly, just say thank you, really helpful clarification. And as the Tackling Poverty champion, I'm very keen to support and engage with that work in any way that I can. So that offers there, Helen, I know we've spoken already, but anything I can do to support that work, please just let me know.
That's great, thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else have anything they want to add? Okay, well, I'd just like to say I attended the climate event that with the young people, and as always, it is they that ask the most difficult questions, because they don't take anything for granted like we do, and they don't see difficulties in the way that we do. They're just, well, why doesn't it happen? And you're thinking, well, because adults are stupid, basically. I mean, that was what came out in the end, isn't it? That they don't trust us to look after their future, which I felt was really depressing, but they were full of ideas and enthusiasm. So, it's really good to see that kind of, interaction taking place, because I know that lots of young people, but young people in particular feel that kind of public sector services are done to them. It's not something that they participate in. And I think that feeling of participation and having your voice heard is really important. So has anybody else got a comment that they'd like to make, please, before I ask us to accept the report? No? Okay, thank you very much for that, Helen. I understand this is not your only appearance this evening, so thank you for that first act. Thank you very much. Okay, so we're happy to accept that report, people. Yep, thank you. Okay, right, N. Sumner Smith. I don't know if I've met you before, so this will be interesting. Working with the third sector. So I'm going to hand over to you, please.
Hi, thanks, Chair. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for inviting me along this evening. I've been asked to talk a little bit about what my team do. My team is the Creative Communities team. We're part of the Vale of Glamorgan Council, and in particular how we interact, support and work with the voluntary sector. So if it's okay with you, I've got a few slides to run through. Is that okay to share?
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. Okay, so I thought I'd just start off briefly with a little bit of who we are. Oh, it doesn't, there we go. So some of you on the call may be aware of us and may be aware of our previous incarnation as creative rural communities, whereby we've been operating for the last nearly 20 years now, supporting rural communities, specifically because of the funding that we had. And when that came to an end about 18 months ago, we were able to broaden our scope. So I'm really pleased to say that we can now work with all of the communities in the Vale of Glamorgan and not just those in the rural communities. We sit within the Place Directorate, and we are dedicated to supporting communities. We work with local residents and organisations, largely to help them to determine their priorities, help them to make action plans, and support them to make funding applications. Because of where we sit in the organisation, our focus is always on regeneration, but really importantly, our focus is on co-production, collaboration, and things that are driven by the communities. So we might support a community, a voluntary organisation, the voluntary sector, in their development and in their priorities and what they do in their areas, but we're really there to facilitate and advise, and yes, to handhold, but certainly not to lead. We definitely champion community-led local development. I'm happy to circulate these slides afterwards, and on each one I've attempted to add a hyperlink for a bit more information on each part. Okay, so I'm just going to give an overview of some of the things that we do. It's quite varied, the work that we do, so I've tried to pull out some elements where it really demonstrates the work that we do with the voluntary sector. So I thought I'd start with community mapping. So this is whereby our teams will support communities to explore their assets within their environment and help them to prioritise new projects and developments. So what that really means is that we get approached by lots of organisations, voluntary and otherwise, and it might be different types of organisations. So it might be a community council, it might be a residents association, village hall association, and so forth. And they might pitch an idea to us, or they might come to us with a blank canvas and say, we want to support our community to understand what the priorities are, and then create some projects and seek some funding. So we will help them to make sure that everybody has a voice in that. So we have lots of tools in our community mapping toolkit, and we are happy to handhold and be able to advise organisations in order to do that. So the toolkit describes lots of different ways of making sure that everybody gets a voice. So it's lots of support about developing an engagement plan that's inclusive, and making sure that there's lots of different ways in which people can engage. Again, there's a hyperlink there to our community mapping toolkit. What we find with this one in particular is that it's usually smaller organisations or smaller communities that might go through this process, and that become apparent as I go to the next slide. So we also do something called placemaking, which on the surface is very similar to community mapping, but it's sort of like a scaled up version. So placemaking is something that is prescribed by Welsh Government. There's currently funding available from Welsh Government to support us, to support towns in particular, to develop placemaking plans. So the idea of placemaking is that it involves working collaboratively, sorry, I can't get my words out, across all sectors and disciplines, to create a comprehensive plan about making their area a distinctive and a vibrant place. Now that's a quote taken from the Design Commission for Wales. Again, what that means on the ground is that we do this kind of community mapping element. So we will work with the third sector, with communities, with the town councils to develop, again, that engagement plan. But it feeds into a much broader plan, which considers lots of different other aspects. So it might consider heritage, culture, sense of place, travel, sustainability, built development, services, facilities, etc., for a whole town. So community mapping is part of that process. It's the engagement part of that process, but it's much more, it's a bigger scale when it comes to placemaking, but they're certainly entwined. Helen mentioned previously that the new wellbeing plan is being adopted, and as part of that there's been some funding assigned from the Shared Prosperity Fund, following on from the grasshopper work, to tackle poverty and different things in our most deprived areas. I've added this slide into our portfolio, if you like, of work, because we're working with Helen to co-host that member of staff. So the person who is delivering that, Sarah, is part of our team, because essentially she is a community development officer, just like the others in our team. And so we have a dedicated resource now that works in those most deprived communities in the Barry area, and yeah, really feeds into that public service board, really highlights what's the priorities within the wellbeing plan. So again, should be doing lots of work which works alongside understanding what the voluntary sector are doing there, what the local residents are interested in, but more specifically around what the assets are, but also what the deficits are in those communities. And that's really not that dissimilar to what we do in community mapping and placemaking, where we're working with a broad section of organisations to understand what the assets are in the community, and through those discussions to really understand, without explicitly asking the question what the deficits are. They certainly come out through a number of different sort of engagement plans and tools that we use, and then to help those communities prioritise what comes next. And this piece of work is not dissimilar to that at all. We also look after a couple of grants, which I'm sure some of you will be familiar with. So the Strong Communities grant is funded by the Vale of Glamorgan Council. It offers grants to community groups, the voluntary sector, town and community councils. And as the slide said, this is to do with the costs of initiatives within the Vale, which help to support the council's vision of a strong communities with a bright future. Through this work, we engage with lots of voluntary sector organisations to determine what their positions are, what their priorities are, how to develop projects, and then support them to make applications to that funding. So a lot of you will be very aware that having grant funds is a really good way of engaging with different sectors and building relationships. So this is an ongoing fund that's been running for several years now. So yeah, we're really pleased to be able to continue to offer this. Again, there's a link on there for the Strong Communities Grant Fund. It's not currently open because we run this once a year, but the guidance is on there and the information regarding it. Another fund that we manage is the Shared Prosperity Fund. This is a UK government funded pot that they give to local authorities to administer. The primary aim of the Shared Prosperity Fund is to build pride in place and increase life chances across the UK. And it's split into three priority areas: communities and place, supporting local business, and people and skills. Again, on the communities and place side in particular, we get lots of requests for information and developing projects from the voluntary sector, and all inquiries are assigned a development officer from our team to work with them to develop their application. Largely those applications will have to demonstrate a need So they'd have to bring together some evidence. Sometimes that will require the organisation to perhaps go away and do some of that community mapping type work. And again, our officers will support them to do that. Likewise, we might have organisations wanting to run projects around the people and skills side of things. And again, we have dedicated officers that will help voluntary organisations and other organisations to develop their projects and to develop their evidence base, really, that project is needed. Again, there's a link there. The Shared Prosperity Fund is a rolling programme, so it's open for communities in place and people and skills all of the time, and supporting local business. There's an expression of interest that you can submit anytime as well. We're in the second of 3 years of this programme, so there's only another 1 financial year to go on this. So if you're interested in that, then please check that out as soon as you can. I appreciate that that's a whistle-stop tour of what we do, but I hope that that gives you a flavour of the type of work that we do and how we engage with the voluntary sector to deliver on a number of different objectives, schemes, help them access funding, etc. So thank you for having me.
No, thank you for that. That was very informative. Right, thank you. So, Councillor Bruce.
Yes, good evening. My question is, how do you help the areas or groups that haven't got a community council?
So we get approached by lots of different organisations. So it might not be the community council that comes forward and asks for support. We might be approached by individual residents or people that want to develop a specific project. It could be a residents association, village hall association. It could just be a group of individual residents that aren't aligned to a particular organisation. The process is the same, really. We would help them to develop a comprehensive engagement plan, so that ensures that everybody has a voice where it's possible to do so. Part of that engagement plan would be understanding what all of the organisations, voluntary or otherwise, that are operating in that area, who they are, what they are, who they represent, and invite them to be involved in the process. So there doesn't need to be a community council in place. In some cases, that's really helpful. In some cases, even if there is a community council, they might still play a relatively small part in that process. It really depends on how involved they want to be.
Okay, thank you. One last thing then, awareness then. In the ward that I'm in, we don't have a community council, and it's awareness. I mean, I'm not sure that groups are aware of this, you know, funding.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, it's always interesting to hear that, and really useful to have that feedback, because obviously we attempt to be quite comprehensive in what we do. We often find that the grant schemes themselves bring in a lot of queries from organisations, and that helps us to build our report. I should have mentioned that also, as part of the Shared Prosperity programme, we are partnered with GVS, who are running a small grants scheme for us, and of course GVS have a huge number of voluntary organisations on their lists, on their book, so they're able to help us reach lots of voluntary sector organisations through that way. With regards to the community mapping side of things, what we generally find is if people aren't aware of us and therefore can't just come to us to ask for our support in that, we usually find that we end up supporting people through that process off the back of an application or a query about some funding. So if a community or an organisation says, we think we want to do X, we will ask them if they have an evidence base for that. And if they don't, then we will support them through that community mapping process. But it's interesting to hear that not all wards or areas are aware of us. And I would say that if that's in Barry and Penarth, that might be because we're relatively new to those areas. But if it's a rural ward, I'd be interested to hear that and surprised.
Yeah, it's Roos.
Okay, right. Okay.
And it's huge, Roos.
Right.
And there are, yes, lots of projects that could be funded by this, I believe.
Yeah. We have funded lots of projects in Roos in the past, and a number of years ago did a very light touch community mapping exercise there. But I appreciate that people change.
Yes.
And that, you know, that message isn't always rolling with new representatives in those communities.
Yeah. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Has anybody else got a question they'd like to ask, please? No? Okay, could you send us all out those slides then, please? Because I think that they would be particularly useful to those of us who do have community councils and would like to make people aware of the possibilities of the funds that are available.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no problem at all.
Lovely. Thank you very much for your report. I look forward to hearing the next one. No, thank you. Right, okay, and our last report today is, I think it's Helen and Rachel, isn't it? And it's a review of the Voluntary Sector Compact. So if we could hand over to you two, please. I'll come off screen.
Thanks, Chair. Rachel and I are going to do a joint presentation, and this really builds on some of the discussion that we had at the meeting in July, where we were starting to talk about the need to refresh the voluntary sector compact between the council and GVS. So we wanted to take the opportunity in this meeting to flag up some of the key things within the compact, just to help, I think, us kickstart that process and some initial thoughts of the committee and some of the things that are in the existing compact. So I have a colleague with me who's going to share the slides for me, Andreas, if you don't mind sharing those slides, and then I'm going to do the first view, and then Rachel will come in as well, and then
I also have my colleague Paul Warren with me, who's one of our operational managers, and so Paul will also be interjecting and supporting.
Thank you. So the existing compact was signed in 2017 and was due to last until 2021. So I think, as we discussed in the summer, we are definitely due a review of that existing arrangement, and things have probably moved on quite a bit until that was originally drafted. There is still a really strong relationship between us, and a lot of good work that's happening, and it's important that we try and capture that, I think, now in terms of that new compact going forward. So as I say, today we're sort of at the start of that process, and just wanted to pick up on a couple of the things within the existing compact. So we're going to run through some slides, and then we'll come back to some of the slides with some questions, I think, on those. So the first thing we just wanted to highlight from the existing compact is on the next slide, and that's about the purpose of the compact. So it's signed between the council and GVS, but it sort of covers the breadth and the framework in terms of that relationship between the council and the third sector. So in the current compact, we talk about the purpose of it being about recognising that contribution made to communities and the community as a whole through voluntary action, and it sets out some of the expectations really between the two sectors, and there's quite a detailed compact at the moment, and one of the things we'll be looking at is in terms of how to best articulate some of this relationship as we move forward. So as I say, it provides a framework for ongoing collaboration within the context of community planning, so again about how we work together, about what the key issues are that matter to our communities, and in the third bullet point here we talk about it being that agreement that's built on the principles of integrity, trust and mutual respect between the organisations and the sectors as well. And then the aim of the compact, as articulated at the moment, is to provide a local framework within which the voluntary sector and the council can work together. So again, being mutually beneficial, but making sure that we are both delivering for the communities of the Vale. So that's how we've articulated the purpose at the moment. If I just move on to the next slide then, which sets out the themes and objectives within the current compact. So there's 4 themes of communication, consultation and participation, partnership working, funding and resources and volunteering. And for each of these themes within the compact, we've set out a number of objectives, as I say, and these were what was drafted in 2017. So under the communication theme, we talk about that need to make sure we've got proper mechanisms so there can be that transparent communication across the sectors. And again, recognising that this can very much be at the heart of everything that we're trying to do, having that good relationship and that good communication. In terms of the partnership working, we talk about that good practice, again, making reference to participation, the consultation, decision making, but also about that interface as well in terms of GVS, sort of making sure that they're representing the third sector and working not just with the council, but across other organisations as well. And as I mentioned earlier, GVS sit within the Public Services Board, and I know a lot of other partnership arrangements as well in terms of making sure that voice is there. So again, I say making sure we've got those mechanisms. Funding and resources, again, is always a critical issue here. So again, what we've highlighted in the current compact is about making sure that we're making the best use of those resources that are available and being as creative as we can in terms of how they're used. And then the fourth objective linked to volunteering is about the potential to add value and meet those unmet needs. I'm just going to move on then to the next slide, which is about the vision. So what we've detailed in the current compact is that it recognises the voluntary action combined with partnership working is the basis for a vibrant local democracy and strong communities. And then there's a number of points which we set out in terms of what we think are important for local people. So we're saying here that it would be about actively support each other, sharing in the decision making, enabling people to fully develop and use their skills, live in safe, sustainable and well-designed environments, participate in the distinct artistic and cultural life of Wales, and having access to the wide range of local services and facilities that can improve health and well-being. And again, as we know, that's kind of obviously an ever-changing landscape in terms of what is being provided. Again, here then we talk about making sure that we've got that recognition and respect across the different roles, and also making reference to the diversity within our communities. And some of what Nicola was just talking about around that placemaking and that community mapping, again, is some of the reference to understanding those different needs within our communities. And then the fourth element we wanted to pick up today in terms of the compact is the shared values. And these are detailed at the moment in terms of the following bullet points. So again, that equality of opportunity, so recognising the diversity within our communities and the need to take account of that and make sure people are involved. Understanding the independence, but also the complexity of the voluntary sector. So again, not underestimating some of the difficulties, but actually the fact that within the voluntary sector, it's not all exactly the same, and there can be different challenges as well. Again, we're talking about the local democracy and empowering people, which really leads into that enabling people to be able to participate as well within activities. The last couple of points here that we've also got are about sort of encouraging that partnership working, encouraging voluntary action linked to community leadership, and then making sure that we're acknowledging that contribution of volunteers and unpaid carers and the important role that they have. So those are the four things that we wanted to kind of come back and focus on as part of a discussion today, that how we've currently framed the purpose, the values, the vision, and the themes and objectives. And we'll come back to those, I think, one by one. But I'm just going to hand over now to Rachel and Paul, who are going to talk a little bit more about some of the perspective from the third sector and some of the work that is happening already to help shape the next compact.
Thanks very much, Helen. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I guess the history and background of the compact was forged in a different time, if you like, pre-COVID, when there was more resource around, I think, for all of us. So we are looking really at how we take this partnership agreement, this compact between ourselves in the third sector and our partners in the local authority forward, really to ensure that we are making it work in this economic environment and all of the challenges that all of us sitting around the table are currently facing. I think from the third sector's perspective, and I'm sure that my colleague Linda will correct me if I'm getting this wrong. In days gone by, there was a lot more resource within the sector that enabled capacity to engage in many of these sorts of activities, including attending things like the Voluntary Sector Joint Liaison Committee. Though those days are behind us, and it is a real challenge for third sector organisations to release staff to participate in partnership working along these lines. The Vale of Glamorgan is populated by many small third sector organisations who are intent and dedicated to delivering services to their communities, whether it's a community of place or a community of interest. And taking them away from that is one heck of a challenge. So getting people to engage in this process and the committee and the work of the committee has been a bit of a downward slope for us in the third sector. So you've got key players like Linda and Hayley, and there have been others. Age Connects were heavily involved for a while, but their numbers of staff have massively dwindled, so it's difficult for them to put forward an active player to participate in this. So one of the things that we've tried to do in GVS is to engage with our membership, and Nicola very kindly mentioned that it is a large membership. We're a very small county voluntary council here in the Vale of Glamorgan, but our membership is larger than some of the big fish that swim in the same waters as ourselves in third sector support Wales. Those are the other county voluntary councils. So our membership is between 750 and 800. It depends on the time of year that you look at our membership numbers as to how close it is to the 800 mark. And they really are, in the main, very small local organisations. So they are the grassroots, the real foundation of that community engagement, that community resilience, and the community asset foundation for the third sector, and indeed for our partners wishing to engage with the third sector here in the Vale of Glamorgan. So we've developed a questionnaire, and we're asking really what current awareness there is within our membership of what the compact actually is, whether the document that we have, and Helen through the presentation has highlighted the key aspects of it, whether that's still relevant, whether there are areas of it that we need to update, whether it's strong enough, whether we need to add some more muscle to some of the elements that are included within the compact document, and asking for generalised comments. The questionnaire goes into some detail so that we're trying to eke out the answer from people without them having to put too much effort into it, because I know that you'll all be aware that there are a heck of a lot of questionnaires out there at the moment, not least I think there's about maybe 4 or 5 coming out of the local authority at the moment. So and certainly we sent out other questionnaires to our membership, and getting people to complete those I think we all know is quite a challenge. So we're waiting to see what sort of response and return of those questionnaires we get, to be able to input the voice of the local sector into this process as we work with our partners in the local authority. So Paul, I don't know if there was anything you wanted to add to that at this juncture, or?
Yeah, I guess it's reinforcing what you said at the beginning, is when this compact was written and launched, it was a completely different environment, and the issues that were being faced by organisations and groups then, and communities, the priorities have changed, and the day-to-day issues affecting those organisations have changed. There'll always be the constant issues around funding and being able to engage effectively with communities, but certainly organisations I've spoken to, and from our perspective as well, issues around poverty, and poverty from different areas, whether that be food poverty, energy poverty. I think the answers we'll get back from this questionnaire are going to be very interesting, and hopefully will positively shape the way that we all work as we go forward with it.
In many aspects, really echoing elements of the Public Service Board's agenda. So, it's key that we undertake this piece of work, and it's key that we update the document, whether it's a compact or a partnership agreement. There are various names for something like this across Wales and indeed across the UK. Back to you, Helen.
Thanks, Rachel. So on our final slide, we've just sort of highlighted some questions, which I think again resonate in terms of what Rachel was talking about, the questions that they're currently asking their membership. And this is really, as I say, to help us start to think about what this new compact or arrangement will look like. So, thinking about how we've currently set things out within the compact, we're keen for views about whether the purpose is clear, or whether we need to redefine it. Have we got the themes and objectives, are they still relevant for where we are now and the direction that we think we'll be moving towards, and whether actually we need new vision and values for the compact as well. So we really wanted to take the opportunity to sort of seek the views really of members of the committee on those, to help us start to shape what this new compact will look like, and then we can kind of come back to yourselves as it's developing as well, to see sort of that as the iterative process. So if you want, we can kind of go back to the slide that sort of detailed what the purpose was, because I'm conscious that we sort of rush, we've gone through them all in terms of the members being able to see it. So I say this was sort of the purpose here. So really it was first of all, whether there were any views on the the purpose of the compact and what we need to make sure we make clear.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Mark Wilson, you've got your hand up. Now, Councillor Wilson is not a member of this committee. Are we happy for him to speak? Yep, okay, thank you. So Mark and then Susan, please.
Yeah, thank you very much for the presentation, and thank you for your comments, Paul and Rachel, on this as well. There's a couple of things. First of all, is that I myself, I'm quite active in two organisations in Penarth, Glendale Community Association and Penarth Fair Trade Forum. And to be honest, I don't get much communication from your organisation at all. Yeah, but I know that we are members of GVS, and I just wondered perhaps there's a way of getting into GVS ourselves to make sure that our information is there, that you got our information, so we can update it if there's anything that, so that our current information. That's the first point. And I wonder if you don't have that facility, I wonder if you could bring that back and to the GVS organisation to look to see how you could do that, because I do think that's a useful thing, because otherwise you've got an onerous task. As Rachel rightly said, you've got something like 800 organisations. Keeping track of those is an immense task. And perhaps, we could help you by going into the website, making sure all the details are correct. And so that's my first point. Second point, in terms of the compact, I think, I see your organisation as a bit like when it's got bad weather. You need an umbrella to protect yourself from bad weather. And I think that's how I see GVS, as an umbrella organisation, really helping and facilitating how you could help community organisations. And you've got superb application. We used to be much more paper based. I know it's online, Vista, And I think Vista always is a good magazine that should be widely circulated because it really helps organisations find the relevant footpath in order to get information out there. And I really think that's a sort of aim. And I think Vista should be circulated to all councillors and community councillors as well, online, electronically. It won't cost you anything that way. Obviously, you need a database, but I think that is a way forward. I really do, because I think in the future, and as you know now, councils are facing real budgetary concerns here. I know we've got Cardiff First Sector Council equally. You know, these other organisations, you're going to be much more used than you've been before for some considerable period of time. So those are my 2 points. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think
If I may,
Susan's
Chair.
Yeah, of course,
Sorry.
go on, Rachel.
Yeah, it was just really to say that as far as the membership is concerned, we undertake an annual membership survey and review, asking organisations to provide us with up-to-date information. All organisations have the opportunity to receive a funding bulletin, Vista, a weekly news bulletin, e-bulletin, and also a bi-weekly health bulletin. Now, it's whether your organisation has opted in to receive those, or whether it's one individual within the organisation who's in receipt of that information and not sharing it, perhaps, Mark. The other element really about being an umbrella, you're absolutely right. That's indeed what we are. We're a membership organisation, a county voluntary council, so we're made up of our membership, and we do actually provide all of those electronic elements, the e-bulletins and Vista, to the council to share amongst councillors. So I'm not sure what's happening internally within the council, but on a weekly, fortnightly, and then 3 times a year with Vista, you should be receiving that information. So perhaps, Chair, that's something that could by Karen and her colleagues to see where that information is going. Thank you, Mark. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. Susan, I think then Conway.
Sorry, Chair, I don't know whether Mark, I can see Mark has got his hand up again. I don't know whether Mark wanted to respond.
Do you want to come back, Mark, or is it a different point?
If that's okay, Chair, if you don't mind. Just briefly, yes, point taken. I still think, though, I think on your website, if we could update the information there, so that would be very useful, or even an email I can find straightforwardly, so I can get the relevant information. So obviously, information not coming to me. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Back to Susan then, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Helen, for taking us through that. I'm just wondering if the questionnaire, I'd be interested in seeing the questionnaire that's gone out to members, if that could be shared with me, if not the rest of the committee, because when I talk to colleagues in the third sector, and if I talk to them about the compact, most of them don't recognise that phrase and have not heard of it. But if I talk to them about what does it feel like in terms of working with the council, as a voluntary sector organisation, I get quite a different response. So people will then talk about proactive engagement, grant funding programmes, the training, support, advice they've got through GVS from various workshops that they've attended. So admittedly, my connections will not be as broad as yours, but my sense is that the outworking of the intention of the original compact is still strong and recognised. But I'm wondering what the questionnaire is asking, because I'm conscious that might not be reflected in terms of the responses that you get. So it'll be interesting to see that. And my other, I suppose, question is, and I think I've said this before in this committee, this is just one example of touch points between the third sector and the council. There are many others. And so I'm interested to know how do we capture that so that we can really test the strength of the relationship between the council and the third sector, because that's essentially what the compact is about. We're committed to working together, recognising the value that the third sector brings to the table. And my own view is that's never been more valid than in the current cost of living crisis. So how do we capture some of that effectively? I think refreshing the compact gives us an opportunity to really look at that. You know, and in terms of engagement, I absolutely take the point about pressure that the third sector has faced, you know, in recent years through COVID, post-COVID, cost of living. And again, I think it would just be interesting to understand whether a different approach to engagement, flexibility around meeting times might enhance that face-to-face engagement. So yeah, really, you know, good timing, great that it's happening. Lots of questions, interested to see the outcome of the consultation process, and you know, very keen to explore what we can do to build on the strength of current engagement and you know, address any gaps.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't know if you want to come back on that, Rachel, or shall I go back to the next question?
Sorry, Chair. Rachel has lost her network signal.
Oh, right. Okay.
She's asked me to step in if there were any questions. And if it's okay, I'm going to send a link in the chat to the online questionnaire, so everybody will have a copy today.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, Conway. Conway? You're on mute.
Sorry, I'm trying to be part of two meetings. My question was going to be around, there was an Audit Wales report a few years ago on the compact between the voluntary sector and the Vale Council, that talked about the need for a change of culture at the council for any sort of compact to work. And I'm just wondering whether if any work may have been done to achieve a change of culture, and indeed, given the funding crisis that we're now seem to be in the council, whether in fact the culture hasn't sort of deteriorated a bit as opposed to improved. And I'd be interested in that sort of culture, particularly amongst officers of the council, in terms of their attitude to the voluntary sector. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I think Helen wants to come back on that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, as Conway mentioned, there was a report that we asked Audit Wales to undertake a while ago on the relationship with the third sector compact. And I think as part of our response to that, we recognised there was a need for quite detailed engagement to understand much more the different experiences of what it's like to work with the council for the sector, and also to understand more some of the experiences across the organisation. So today you've heard from Nicola about the work that they do, but as you say, it's very varied roles across the organisation in terms of our different arrangements with the third sector. We are looking to take that forward now, and I think we touched a bit on this when Tom and I attended the meeting before the summer, about bringing a number of pieces of work together. So there's been some subsequent Audit Wales reports that have focused on poverty, but have also, within those, they've picked up about community resilience, and so, for example, within that, work with town and community councils, and also work with social enterprises. So there's actually another report going to Scrutiny Committee later this week about how we might bring together our work across all these Audit Wales reports now to inform our work on cost of living, but also to inform what our relationships are with different sectors. And the proposal is that we would bring in another organisation to facilitate some of those discussions with staff members, this committee and the different sectors, to help start to inform that work. That will also link with the council's transformation programme as well, because I think, as we've said a number of times tonight, things have moved on, relationships have changed, but there's a lot of different pressures on the different organisations and different demands, and to us to get a better understanding. So we are still committed, I think, to taking that work, but we're seeing it now as part of, rather than just a piece of work just about the third sector, as part of that wider programme of work. And again, that will also inform what the new compact will look like as well. So we're trying to bring a lot of different things together, but hopefully to then have some really positive outcomes coming out of that about those different relationships and how we move forward. So hopefully that answers that question.
Conway, you're on mute again.
Yes, so for me then it would be, is there some sort of a time scale? Because the Audit Commission report, the Audit Wales report is 3 or 4 years old, isn't it? And has there been any progress, do we think? And is there some time scale for this to take place?
I think there has been progress in terms of the good relationships that we do have with the third sector and the discussions that we've been having through this committee about trying to sort of refresh and re-energise some of that as well. We're hoping to be able to start some of those conversations now this side of Christmas as we bring that work together. And I think, again, we recognise that the process of doing that and building those relationships will be as important as some of the outcomes themselves, and making sure that we're working with our partners on that. So once we've been to committee later this week and then on to Cabinet, then we'll be able to frame that timetable much more clearly, and we'll be able to bring that back to the committee as well with something a bit tighter, I think, for you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Rachel.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry about my absence then. I've got a feeling that aeroplane must have sorted out my connection well and truly for me there. Yes, there are challenges out there, I think, in the purpose of the compact. There are challenges for the sector to challenge our partners in the local authority. It is a strange relationship when resources to the sector do actually come via the local authority, so that it can add some difficulties to I guess raising some tricky situations and questions. And for me, I think one of the challenges for our partners in the local authority is always to think about the third sector and how any of their decisions are going to impact on the third sector before they actually put them in place. So when they're recruiting community development workers into the council, perhaps just to think that maybe some resource for some of those community development workers to sit in the community development agency that works within the area of the local authority might have been something that could have been considered. So perhaps we could also look at developing volunteering projects in the housing department. You know, maybe that resource could have come out from the council and gone out into the third sector. And I think that can be echoed across many departments within the local authority. So certainly within social services, there are probably mental health services and support issues that could perhaps sit within the third sector. But it's that challenge for all of us, isn't it? It's that human nature element of wanting to keep control and wanting to keep that resource within our own organisation. But we're not necessarily getting best value. And we've all talked, haven't we, about the challenges that we're facing, all of us, with regards to resource. And certainly the local authority is in the thick of it. There's going to be a massive knock-on effect from the struggles that Welsh Government, Health and our partners in the Vale of Glamorgan Council hit, that will come on to the third sector. And interestingly, you know, we're always encouraged to look for other sources of resource. But if you go to the National Lottery at the moment, you'll find that they have got 6 times the number of applications coming into them than they had previously. So the competition and the challenge to get any resource out of some of those big funding players is mammoth. So I guess what I'm hoping to see from the compact is more teeth and more opportunity for the third sector to to challenge without fear of any comeback. And I believe that the relationship that we've got currently with the local authority does actually allow us the possibility of further developing that. You know, I think that we've worked extraordinarily well between many different organisations from the third sector and our partners in the local authority. So I think we've got this opportunity really now to build on that and to make this into a document that's going to serve all of us well for the next 5-10 years if we get it right. So it is a big challenge, and it will be extraordinarily interesting to see what our members come back with. Compact I think is likely to be one of the comments. Be surprised if it wasn't. And I think that, you know, we do, when we're looking at what the purpose of the compact is, it isn't perhaps to pat each other on the back, it is more perhaps to challenge each other. And if the third sector aren't doing what our partners in local authority are hoping we'll do, then we need to have that honest and open opportunity for that conversation to take place. Thank you, Chair.
No, thank you very much. That's good, isn't it? I mean, I think that a restatement of what this is all about, I think, is really valuable, because I feel that the purpose and the drive behind the committee and the services that it serves has been a little bit lost lately. And I think a lot of that is resetting our expectations and our needs after COVID, because it produced such a change in the way that we think and behave and react to each other, and how organisations respond to need, that it's been incredible. We could not have foreseen this, 4 years ago. Okay, Helen and then Linda, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think, as you say, we've just been focused there on the purpose of the compact. The next slide, which kind of shows the themes and the objectives, I think, again, we've covered quite a bit of that in what we've been discussing around that relationship and that partnership working. And again, as always, funding and resources. And I think one of our challenges is, as we were saying, is about that relevance of the compact. There's a lot of words in the existing compact, and I suppose it's often that default of trying to capture so much within that and dotting the I's, crossing the T's, and we'll do this and you'll do that kind of thing. But actually, in terms of what will actually be meaningful and have some longevity, and that we can then actually, I suppose, share more widely with organisations, there's something about how we can, I think, articulate that and frame that it's something that means something across the sector. So I think there is with us now, as we move forward, this piece of work of not probably getting too bogged down in lots and lots and lots of detail. I think we must capture this, but actually what will be something that will be useful and may feel quite dynamic to articulate that relationship, and recognising that things do change and different pressures and challenges will come in. So I think it's been really useful hearing that feedback today about the knowledge about the compact and some of the experiences of sort of working with the council across the sector. So thank you.
No, thank you. Linda?
I just wanted to say, because I acknowledge everything that you've all said, and Rachel and also Helen, and just to say, well, it's just a useful tool, isn't it, to have that compact there to build on and to explore and to have that dialogue and to go forward with. So it is probably lost, it hasn't been looked at for a while maybe, and it's not a sort of living document maybe as it could be, but it's really valuable to have some sort of mechanism like that to make things work if we can properly look at that, and as Rachel said, there's proper dialogues and conversations about how to improve relationships. So I just wanted to say that because it's really useful to have it there than not, if we can make the most of it.
Yes, I think it's always good, isn't it, to outline our expectations, what we need to be looking to do going forward. And I think what I'd like to see us do, it's a suggestion, you can shoot me down if you want, is to revisit this every year or so to see how both sides have performed against these themes and objectives. Otherwise, it's not a living document, it's yet another piece of paper. And, we all know that, death by bits of paper is not a good way to go. And otherwise it's a complete waste of everybody's time, isn't it? We know what we're supposed to be working towards, and, we can see evidence from both sides as to how that's actually happening. And I think that makes the whole point of the document is that it works for us and it provides us with guidelines. Rachel.
Thank you, Chair. It was just really to come back and say we did used to have an action plan with actions for both the council and the third sector to deliver on. So, you know, I'm sure Helen and I will be looking at that again as a possible mechanism for the future. But we need to delve, don't we, into this document first. And I just wondered what the council plan was for embedding first engaging with their own directorates and departments and staff as to what they think about the compact, and then making sure that it's properly embedded by us in the third sector and by the council within the council structure itself.
Okay, I think I'm going to turn to Helen now and ask her what she thinks about what Rachel has just said.
Yeah, I think, again, that will be part of the challenge that we'll need to take forward as we're developing the compact, is having those conversations about across the council about people's experience and understanding of working with the sector as well. I think both the positives and some of the things that they've maybe found haven't worked so well. And I think some of the conversations we've had before is that experiences can vary very much between individuals and services. So we need to take account of that and work out how we can fix some of that, I think, through this, and what some of that work will be going forward. So I think, as well as the engagement with the third sector, we do need to have that reflection within the organisation as well. And I think we're keen, as I was saying earlier, in seeing this as part of that bigger piece of work around the council's relationship with other sectors and how that links in with the transformation programme as well, to bring that all together. So there's some consistency there. But again, it's looking very much to the future and what that needs to look like, and actually, you know, how we move forward. So I think, again, as you were saying, that revisiting things more regularly to see how things are changing, and to understand those different insights, I think be really important. So, as I say, you know, this compact was 2017 to 21, you know, hopefully we can stay more on top of it in terms of moving forward, and those regular updates. And again, you know, utilising the experience of this committee, I think, particularly on the third sector side.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you very much. I'm glad to see that people think that it's, you know, a good move to be revisiting this, possibly a year down the line, so we can see what progress has been made against it, and to keep us all on the straight and narrow as to what we're supposed to be doing. Okay, is there any other comments people would like to make, or have you all been stunned into silence? Right. I haven't got any other business. I don't know if there's anything else that you've been notified of, Karen.
No, Chair, that's fine. No,
excellent. Thank you. What I would like, please, I would like the presentations to be sent out to the members of the committee, and then we can circulate them to our groups if we think that's necessary. And I'd be very grateful for that. And I look forward to the next meeting. Thank you very much for everybody's contributions this evening. It's been very pleasing. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.